The man sleeping in my guest room wasn't just my late husband's friend. He was a keeper of secrets, and by midnight, he would use one to change my life forever. Hello and welcome back to Hidden Love Stories. Today we're sharing a story about how a rainy night, an old friend, and a whispered confession can open the door to a second chance you never saw coming. Do you believe love can find you again when you least expect it? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story of unexpected connection. Now, let's begin. Emily is 61. I've lived alone in this quiet Northern Virginia residence for over 7 years. I've gotten used to the serenity, stillness, and soothing regularity of morning tea and evening books now that my children are grown and live on opposite coasts. Thought I was happy. Maybe I was, until last weekend. He arrived in the downpour. John, my late husband's university mate. The last time I saw him was nearly a decade ago. We exchanged holiday cards and birthday greetings, but nothing personal. When he called to say he'd be going through Virginia and wanted to catch up, I said yes without thinking. I suggested we meet at a local coffee shop, but he startled me by asking if he might stay the night, saying all the hotels were filled for a wine festival. I hesitated but agreed. My guest room was tidy, and he was an old buddy. It seemed innocent. He arrived to sheets of rain. I opened the door and saw him, older, silverier beard, but same easy smile. He carried his overnight bag and rainy fragrance. We entered the kitchen after nervously shaking off the ears with polite small conversation in the entryway. Made tea. He added a little whiskey. Sitting at the kitchen island, we talked for hours. My kids, his retirement, and his travels. It had been a while since I had a talk like that, full of memories, laughing, and silence. One day, he reached over the desk to tuck my hair behind my ear. I glanced at him without responding or pulling away. That moment passed without comment. Around 11, I pushed him into the guest room. A nice room with clean linens, a little reading lamp, and a backyard window. He smiled warmly and thanked me, but somewhat too long. After saying goodnight, I locked my bedroom door and stood with my hand on the knob, heart strangely awake. No idea what woke me at midnight. It could have been the wind tapping branches against the window or a stranger in the house. I froze, reaching for my bedside water glass. Though intentional, the hallway footsteps were faint. I softly got out of bed and opened the door. The corridor was black, save for the weak light from the guest room door. Not from a lamp, it flickered candlelight. A bit faster heartbeat. I padded to the door and opened it softly. John sat on the bed with a bedside candle. He peered up at me, alarmed, then calmed. I couldn't sleep, he said. Too much contemplation. I entered, wondering why I hadn't gone to bed. Are you okay? I asked quietly. Just returning, he nodded. This home reminds me of him. You laugh. How things felt before. I said nothing. I stood there with the candle creating shadows on the walls, and his face. He looked down and said, I'm sorry I crossed a boundary earlier. Your hair. I didn't mean to bother you. I approached. You didn't, I said. He raised eyes. I saw something in his eyes, tenderness and fatigue, vulnerable. Familiar. I realized I wasn't terrified in my old robe with my gray-streaked hair and bare feet on the hardwood floor. I wasn't confused. I had no idea what would happen. Suddenly, he softly caressed my hand. Every idea I had about loneliness changed. I kept my hand. We were silent for a time. A warm, steady thumb rested on the back of my hand. The light flickered between us, giving a warm amber glow that made the place appear timeless. The calm breath between us and the wordless thrum was all there was. I sat on the bed edge beside him. "It's odd how quickly silence can feel like company," I remarked, barely audible over the rain. John gently smiled, keeping eye contact. "Not strange to me," he said. "I think silences are deserved." Our hands hardly touched as we stayed. His weight was soothing, something I hadn't realized I'd been missing until it was there beside me. I'd become used to my own footsteps and widowhood solitude. Now I noticed his gentle voice and subtle lean in when he listened. He spoke up. "I swore to Emily I didn't expect anything. Being with you again triggered unexpected emotions." I breathed softly, unsure of my emotions. I looked down at our linked hands. "What I expected is unknown. This doesn't feel wrong." He nodded. "It doesn't. We didn't kiss. We didn't even approach. Instead, we talked for hours." He told me about his quiet, uneventful divorce 10 years ago and how the love had faded like an old song. He talked about his regrets, what he wished he'd said, and how he missed his big dreaming self. The first few years after Thomas died, the house felt too huge, and I started sleeping on one side of the bed out of habit. I told him about my anxieties of aging, slipping into life's wallpaper, and wondered whether I'd experienced my last new beginning. He listened like no one in years. We retreated to the bed, backs against the headboard, shoulders touching, between stories and silences. We shared warmth, not haste. I laid my head on his shoulder and his cheek lightly touched my hair. Closed my eyes. I didn't feel alone then. I didn't feel like a woman reclaiming something. I felt protected, present, and strangely alive. We grew quiet, not from exhaustion, but from ease. I stood up slowly, and he led me to the corridor. Before I turned back to my room, he grabbed my hand again. I knew he meant more than the house when he said thank you for letting me in tonight. I softly squeezed his hand, smiled, and went to bed. I slept without loneliness for the first time in years that night. I fell asleep thinking about his softened voice when he called me. 2 mugs still drying on the kitchen countertop were warmed by the early sun. Wrapped in a comfortable sweater and thinking, I waited for the kettle to whistle at the stove. The morning silence seemed less vacant and more eager. John entered wearing a gray t-shirt and pants, his hair damp from a shower. The warm light made him look younger. "Maybe it was his smile when we met," he remarked. "Smells like coffee," his voice sleepy. "If you want, I can prepare tea," I said, pouring hot water into 2 glasses. He shook his head and sat at the kitchen table. Perfect tea. No discomfort occurred during the interval. We both thought about the night before, but we didn't say anything. We silently remembered the illuminated chamber. Sitting across from him, I held my mug. "Did you sleep?" Softly, I asked. His smile was little, but I didn't mind being awake. "No, but I didn't say so. We talked about music, the backyard birds, and an old movie we both liked in the morning. We talked tenderly below it all." Every glance had greater meaning. All words felt heavier. His offer to clean the garden patio around midday may have been an excuse to stay later. "Yes," I said. We spent an hour cleaning leaves, scrubbing the glass table, and giggling at a persistent wasp that wouldn't leave John alone. I caught myself studying him. The way he moved, paused to enjoy a blossom, and grinned when I wasn't looking. He looked up and saw me gazing. "Emily, I need to ask you something," he murmured, touching his jeans. Somewhat froze. My heart thudded on my chest. "Would it be odd if I told you I don't want to leave yet?" After looking at him, I replied, "No," I said. Nothing weird about it. He slowly, respectfully approached and took my hand again. Being here with you makes me want to comprehend what this is becoming and where it's going. With you. He spoke with sincerity, not pressure. I nodded, and we stood with his hand around mine, the pleasant breeze blowing. We looked through an old photo book I hadn't touched in years on the living room couch later that day. Photos of Thomas, our kids, and us as children. I felt a wave of emotion, but it wasn't painful. That felt human. John touched my back without comforting or fixing anything. It grounded me. I smiled at him through tears. I whispered, "This house holds so much. Love, loss, joy. Nothing new seemed necessary." He replied, whispering, "There always is. Sometimes we need to reopen the door." Something told me I had. We sat on the porch as the sun sank, spreading long golden beams across the yard. The wind had calmed, the birds had stopped, and the twilight embraced us. 2 glasses of red and white wine were handed out. I handed him his, and we clinked them silently. He smiled. Now stillness was different. It was presence, not absence. His and mine, something we no longer needed to explain. I remarked gently, looking past the trees. I used to watch sunsets like this alone. I sometimes talked to Thomas quietly in here, tapping my chest. I told him about the day, the garden, and what I wished he hadn't missed. John gazed over at me with steady, warm eyes. "You still?" Nodding is less frequent recently. He held my hand without pressing. He said later, "I don't want to rush and don't expect responses straight now. Please know that I've felt more myself in the previous 2 days than in years." I looked for uncertainty and doubt in his face. I found none. "John, you don't make me younger," I responded, palely smiling. "I didn't realize how much I missed your authenticity." He cautiously leaned forward, giving me every chance to retreat. I didn't. Our lips touched lightly, without rush or fireworks, creating a warm, honest connection that was quite wonderful. It wasn't an eternal kiss. It stated, "I see you. Here I am." He lightly leaned his forehead against mine as we parted, and we chuckled. Laughter that releases old and welcomes new. After the stars appeared in the darkening sky, we returned inside. Though we left things unsaid, I offered him the guest room again. Question, potential, not expectation. In the hallway, he looked at the guest room door and then at me. "Tonight, where should I be?" he asked quietly. I hesitated to answer out of respect for what it represented. "Come," I said. There was no haste that night. We stripped off years of fear, reluctance, and loneliness as well as clothes. We spoke, held, and slept near, saying, "I trust you. I no longer fear attention." He made scrambled eggs and toast for breakfast. I observed him from the doorway in my robe and thought, I never thought this would happen at my age, but maybe that's the goal. Love's not time-bound. Sometimes it waits, sometimes it circles back, and occasionally it arrives during a rainstorm, staying the night and changing everything. He left 2 days later with a return plan. We didn't name our building. We promised not to close the door again. I haven't. Not to him. No self-talk. Not anymore.